Hey, welcome to Adventures in Astronomy. Audrey and I are just on our way home here to set up for the night, and tonight we're going to be putting up my brand new rig, and I thought this week I'd talk about that very rig. It's the 6th rig that I've ever put up, but this is definitely the highest quality rig, and I've got a few things to say about it. Now, this rig that I've put together just comprises of so many pieces, and I think that's a bit stupid. I would not normally advocate that anyone does what I've just done, which is to buy every scrap of gear, and I'll go through that in a minute, and puts it all together in one night. But I'm hoping this video will be helpful to quite a few people out there, because what I would certainly advocate is, if you're a beginner astrophotographer, to buy one piece at a time, because you've got to dial in each piece. And I want to tell you the story of this rig, because it's taken me 4 or 5 nights of commissioning work to get it up to speed, and I think tonight will be the night that it is finally ready to start taking its first images. So we're going to head back, set this mount up, and I'm going to show you all the little bits and pieces of challenges that I had whilst I set it up, in the hope that it will help you too. My name's Martin, you're watching Adventures in Astronomy. Well, I've finally got this beauty set up. In putting together this rig, I didn't just put it all together at once and just do it over a week or two. It took months and months of planning. This rig was built around the idea of being portable enough to move without too much effort, but still capable enough that I'm not feeling like I'm compromising every time I'm using it. I'm fortunate enough to be in a decent enough job where I can afford to do projects like this, but it's taken probably the best part of 18 months to do all the research. What would fit with what would work with what, focal lengths, focal ratios, what kinds of cameras, all that kind of thing that goes into researching a rig. And there's been multiple times that things have been on my shopping cart and then back off my shopping cart. And then there are things that appeared along the way that I didn't even know about until about 5 months ago, such as this wonderful Proxisky mount. So I'll start with just taking you completely around the rig to begin with. First of all, the brains of the outfit is the PrimaLuceLab Eagle. Now, I know some of you are watching will probably wonder why I didn't order a Miele quieter or a ASI Air, or even the new TubeTech Astra Station, I think it is. Well, that's because PrimaLuceLab have been tried and trusted in my book for many, many years. I had one of the early versions of the first Eagle. In fact, I think production run 64, and it's just fantastic. I mean, it's got so many ports, and it's purpose built to be just on a mount like this. Yes, there are cheaper solutions. I didn't want to go with the ASI Air, and the reason I didn't want to go with that is I didn't want to tie myself into ZWO products only. I didn't want to go with the TubeTech Station because the early news on that is it's a good system, but it doesn't feel like it's ready for prime time yet, and there are still bugs that they are ironing out on that system. And I didn't want to go with the Miele quieter and a separate power box, because by the time you do both of those, you're well into the 700, 800 pound mark from my research, a similar spec to the Eagle. And although the Eagle is quite a bit more, it's purpose built. It's got a couple of gizmos on it that are well worth having, such as the eye that will test your night sky quality, and the GPS is written on it. It's got so many ports. I really like the interface and the ability to turn things on and off. So the Eagle, if you like, is the brains to the whole outfit, and it was something that I'd settled on pretty early on. Now, going to the Askar SQA85, this is probably the best scope I've ever owned in terms of specs, and I think it's certainly one of the best telescopes out there for the money. Various sizes. I decided on the 85 SQ, or the SQA85 rather, because to me that was the sweet spot. It's got a 408mm focal length. I have been imaging in recent years on a 500mm focal length, and it's just that little bit too strong to fit in things like Andromeda and all your classics. Whereas just having slightly more space at 408, I know I'm going to be able to get Andromeda, probably the Rosette Nebula in there as well. So that fit the bill for that part of the rig. The spot diagrams are incredible, and I'll show you a little bit later on the kinds of performance that you can expect to get out of a telescope like this. Now, the Proxisky UMI 20S or UMI 20S is the mount of choice, and I was heading towards a ZWO EAF, but I feel that this is a much better option and actually better value for money. Now, I'm not going to repeat myself on this because I've already done a video on this mount, and I will link it at the end of this video. So if you want to go and watch that one, there's a much fuller review out there of all the things that it can do. It's a really great mount. It's got a couple of quirks. And that brings me to my first problem that I had with this mount that took me a night or two to iron out. And it was actually the guiding performance. But the error was actually on my part. You see, for years I've been imaging with traditional EQ mounts with a counterweight on one end, a classic equatorial mount. And I had some learning to do on this strain wave gear mount myself to get the PhD2 guiding in. I struggled for quite some time with getting the graphs, and I just, for the life of me, couldn't get it down below 1.5, certainly not below 1 on the guiding graph, and that wasn't good enough for me. And initially I was a bit worried that I'd bought the wrong mount. But it was about getting my PhD guide settings right. Now, I've got to say, massive plus to Proxisky. Knock, who is a user on the Discord server, and I think is actually one of the key figures at Proxisky, helped me out 2:30 in the morning. Because the mount is made over in Hong Kong, I think, or certainly China way, he was able to remote in and get all my guide settings done perfectly. And actually, I learned a lot from just watching him tweak settings and go various places. So I'm in a much better place as a result of his help. And this mount is now guiding at a pixel scale of 0.5 easily wherever you point in the sky. And I have a feeling that it will get better than that because the nights I've been testing it on have been a bit like today, quite windy days. And I think once we get into still, calmer air, this mount is going to possibly get down to 0.3, 0.4. Not that I need that level of guiding performance because my pixel scale on this rig is 1.87. Now, my camera of choice was the One Poseidon M Pro, and it's a great camera. Already I can see that I'm going to be able to take the most brilliant pictures with it, and it's quite an upgrade on the camera that I have been using. And I chose this because of the reviews. The build quality is absolutely second to none. It feels really, really great. And I thought I'd partner that with the filter wheel, which has got the Antlia filters in, the 3 NM for the narrowband filters, and their regular color filters, all at 36mm mounted. It was quite tricky mounting that and quite stressful, but I got them all the right way around in the end. And I know that other people on YouTube have done some really great videos on that, in terms of getting the filters the right way around. So do have a search for those videos. And something that was new for me this time round was an off-axis guider. I've never used an off-axis guider. I've always guided with a guide scope, but I really wanted to use an off-axis guider. The reason for that is I can now disassemble this camera rig in total from the off-axis guider with the filter wheel attached and the camera attached and switch it across to some of my other rigs. And that's going to be quite useful. Now, there was some frustrations with the off-axis guider initially, and I fixed that eventually by realizing that I didn't actually have the prism quite in the right spot. I'd actually got it a little bit too low. Once I'd moved it up slightly, everything snapped into focus and everything was fine. So again, a user error issue and a thing about needing to dial things in. Now, the Xena guide camera from Player One has got an absolutely huge sensor on it. I've got the Bluetti Elite V2 battery, which again, I've already done some video time on, less as a review and more of power requirements, but do search on under my other videos if you want to see that in action. It easily will power this rig for 10 hours plus. And in fact, it'll do so with about 5 hours left of battery power. So it's more than enough to power this rig. I've got the DeepSkyDad flat panel at the top, which again I've done a separate review on, but really, really great. Changes the game for me because I can get flats taken at 5 o'clock in the morning while I'm still sleeping, and then it's all ready to wake up to. And finally, a last minute change, and one that I was slightly disappointed to make, was the Sesto Senso from PrimaLuceLab. Now, I've already said PrimaLuceLab make absolutely fantastic gear, but the Sesto Senso 3 on this particular scope was not a good match. I ended up with slippage issues, and this was an issue that took me the longest amount of time of all to actually resolve. I was out 4 nights sorting this, and I just couldn't get a smooth guide graph going down into a U-curve and up. And the focuser was doing the most strange things. So I would set the 0 point, which is all the way in, and set the maximum amount of steps, and it just would not reach focus. It wouldn't return to the 0 step either. There was always about a millimeter or 2 millimeters out, and once you manually rotated the focuser, of course it had put the step system out by, in my case, 1,500 plus steps. So I was having a great deal of problems getting the whole thing to work. What I realized after quite some time is that it's a slippage issue. And that's because the Sesto Senso focuser works on the fine focusing knob. And although that's a slightly innovative design, it doesn't work well on this telescope, or at least that model of Sesto Senso didn't. It may well work for you. I chose to swap that out for the ZWO EAF Pro. Now, I'm a little bit sad to be losing the Sesto Senso because the build quality, in my opinion, next to the ZWO is actually better. The other bonus that you had is you could actually manually rotate the focuser, and you can't do that with the EAF. However, you can do on the EAF Pro these manual battery operated buttons. So that was a good compromise. And I have to say, night one, it worked absolutely flawlessly. I managed to Google in a suggested step size just by putting in Askar SQA85 into Google with that ZWO, and it did a fairly good accurate step size. I then dialed in the backlash by putting in a little bit of sticky tape at the top of the focuser and nudging it just 20 steps at a time to see when it actually moved, so I could get in the backlash, and that allowed me to get in the steps of backlash. It wasn't too horrendous. I think my backlash is set to about 45-50. The one thing that I would advise anybody to do if you're new to astrophotography, or even in your first 6 months or year of learning, I would not do what I have done and just buy all of this. It was all bought in February and March this year, pretty much in one foul swoop. There's so many components. I haven't really properly talked to tripod because, again, I did that in the UMI 20S video. But there's the tripod, there's the pier, there's the mount, there's the Eagle, there's the focuser flat panel, there is the scope, there is the guide camera, there is the filter wheel, there's the player one, there's the off-axis guider, there's the battery. You are asking for a world of trouble if you just buy all of this all at once and hope for the best. It took, like I said, 4 or 5 nights of getting this all dialed in correctly so that it would work properly. I was only really confident doing this because this, like I said, is my 6th rig, and even then there were new components to learn, such as guiding on the mount and the off-axis guider, and also the focus problems. So in short, the rig didn't become great after one night. The rig became great after several nights of learning and putting everything that I'd learned into practice, allowing myself to make mistakes, and I'd absolutely set my mind up mentally to go through that process. And my final remark on this is, great astrophotography systems are actually tuned in, they're not just bought. I hope you've enjoyed this one. My name's Martin. You've been watching Adventures in Astronomy. That's it for this week.
I say feel that rhythm, let your mind let go, picking up on the subtle signals of your slide. The self is disconnected, all the things we had perfected when the wind changed with all its might. I think we better learn sometime. I think we better learn sometime. We're walking through the courtyard and leaves roll over our shoestrings. So we speak of family and love, the only true things. I know that vanity is dead. The queen says off with its head.